Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the fears of GPs over the care they can give their patients. Many surgeries say demand for their services is much greater than what they're able to provide.
Why can't they see a GP?
Well, one very good reason you can't see a GP is because there aren't enough GPs. Absolutely understand patient frustration and fear.
The Scottish Government says it's directing millions towards our struggling surgeries. Also on tonight's programme, have you had your COVID booster yet?
It's like 10 minutes out your life, and we are so lucky in this country that we have this programme.
The push to get more people jagged before the worst of the winter sets in. Unemployment here rises slightly, and there's still a big gap between pay increases and rapidly rising prices.
Coming up in sport, we'll have the latest from the Scotland camp in Turkey ahead of tomorrow evening's friendly.
And the dogs being deployed to rid Orkney of its troublesome stoats. Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Tuesday's programme. An appointment with the GP is often our first port of call when we have a health issue. But practices are under huge pressure. Many GPs now say demand is massively exceeding what they're able to do. In these financially straitened times, it's perhaps no surprise to hear that funding is a factor. The British Medical Association says GP funding has been cut by £60 million. The Scottish Government says it is investing and recruiting to improve matters. Our health correspondent Lisa Summers spent a day in a GP surgery to see the challenges firsthand.
Even with decorations, things like that.
This community group is all about well-being, but when the conversation turns to seeing a GP, the vibe drops.
An absolute nightmare trying to get an appointment. I'll be quite honest, I gave up calling because every time I call, I'm not getting any answers.
How frustrating is that?
Very frustrating, depressing, and you just feel they're not interested.
Wester Hills Medical Practice, Stacey speaking, how can I help?
The irony in the same building is the local GP surgery. But like every other day, the 3 call handlers that work here break bad news.
Unfortunately, we've reached capacity this morning, but is there anything I can help you with?
Why can't they see a GP?
Well, one very good reason you can't see a GP is because there aren't enough GPs. We can absolutely understand patient frustration and fear that they and their loved ones are maybe not getting access to the care that they deserve. And we agree, we think that the provision is not enough. We cannot work any harder. We are doing everything that we can.
You can speak to them about your diabetes and your eyes as well, okay?
There has been a small rise in overall GP numbers, and the government says it's spending £170 million a year on recruiting more, as well as support staff to help. But demand has also been growing for many years, and the BMA says over a third of practices have vacancies, up on last year.
I worry that we're reaching a tipping point for some practices. They lose 1, maybe 2 doctors out of 3, and the remaining doctors cannot continue. So they return the contract, the practice as may cease to exist, and that is a real concern in some parts of Scotland.
90% of our contact with the health service comes through the community, so things like GP practices. But doctors say we're going to have to get used to changes in the way that we get appointments or access healthcare because they simply cannot meet demand. But the fear is, if we can't sort out the strain in this part of the system, then it's only going to add to pressure in our hospitals and longer waits at A&E. Wester Hailes Medical Centre is in one of Scotland's most deprived communities, where the need for healthcare is even greater. There are around 8,000 patients registered here. Staff can deal with 400 calls a day. Do you think you could do more to try to deal with that volume of calls?
The issues that we have is recruitment. We have staff shortages, we have the demand of patients who are calling, we don't have the staff that can answer the calls.
Staff say there are no easy answers, with shortages in all areas of healthcare. Meanwhile, growing numbers of patients still need help.
Well, meanwhile, the weekly figures for how long people are waiting in A&E showed a slight improvement. 65.1% of patients were seen within the 4-hour target. The previous week's figures were the worst on record. Well, let's reflect more now on the situation in GP practices with Lisa. Lisa, really interesting insight in your piece there. It's just another example of the challenges our health service is facing at the moment.
That's right, Laura. I mean, these are issues that the NHS faces right across the UK that health leaders are grappling with every single day. But that doesn't help if you're the patient who can't see a GP for 2 weeks or who can't get through on the phone even to make an appointment. And doctors say that they acknowledge that work is ongoing to try to attract more people into general practice, but they say it's simply not enough to meet that ever-increasing demand, particularly with an older population living with more complex medical conditions. And whether you talk to people in social care, working in hospitals right across the NHS, they say that increasingly that there's going to need to be a kind of frank and open conversation that involves politicians, experts and the public about what we can realistically expect from the NHS.
OK, Lisa, thank you for that. Well, the union Unison has confirmed its members have rejected the Scottish Government's latest pay offer to NHS staff. This comes following a 2-week consultative ballot which saw 61% of members vote to reject the offer. Unison Scotland's Health Committee will meet this week to discuss next steps. The Health Secretary, Humza Yousaf, has already warned there's no more money for pay increases. Well, for many people, their most recent contact with the health service might have been to get a coronavirus vaccine. Take-up of first doses has been high here. But nearly 2 years on from the first jags being given, is there a sense of vaccine fatigue? Well, now there's a push to make sure everyone who's eligible gets their booster. Here's our science correspondent, Laura Goodwin.
Even if you are the First Minister, the process is the same. A quick check of your details and then on to the jags. Nicola Sturgeon has now received her COVID and flu vaccinations and is encouraging others to do the same.
Vaccination is as important now as it was at the start of the vaccination programme. So I'm encouraging everybody, if you haven't already been vaccinated and you're in one of the eligible groups and uptake is very high, then please book an appointment, come here, get your COVID vaccine and get your flu vaccine as well, because obviously the risk of flu over this winter is not insignificant either.
Some people will be offered both jags at the same time, including care home residents and staff, everyone over 50, and younger people with vulnerable relatives. Younger people with certain conditions, preschool, primary and secondary children and teachers are among those eligible for the flu vaccine.
It's Moderna that you're being offered today.
Staff have been welcoming patients to this Aberdeen vaccination clinic for over a year now. While the pace remains steady, there are concerns that for some people, vaccine fatigue will have set in.
All done.
I mean, I think the information's out there for people to make their own decisions and things, but I understand people have had a lot of vaccinations over the last couple of years due to the pandemic predominantly, but it's things like flu. It's a different strain every year that comes to us, so I think it's highlighting the importance of flu as well as COVID vaccinations.
According to latest figures, just over a third of all health and social care workers in Scotland have had their winter COVID and flu jabs.
Why is that? It's a feature of many things. We've asked our staff, why, what could we do to make this more likely for you to come forward? And some of it is about convenience, and people are really busy. They can't take time off work. And they just simply lead busy lives, and it's difficult to fit it all in.
But for those attending today, getting vaccinated was an easy decision.
I'm asthmatic and I have vulnerable people I need to protect, so I'd rather have something there to build my own immune system to know that the rest of my family and friends are going to be safe.
It's like 10 minutes out your life, and we are so lucky in this country that we have this programme, because there are people around the world that are still waiting on their first one.
I worked in care when I had my 2 Pfizers. And I just feel it's important to get topped up.
Across Scotland, more than 2.7 million jabs have been given since the winter vaccine programme launched in September. In many ways, it may feel like déjà vu, but experts insist maintaining protection for ourselves will also help the health service. Laura Goodwin, reporting Scotland.
12 dead swans have been found in Hoganfield Park in Glasgow. It's understood 2 more sick birds have been identified. Glasgow City Council says it's assumed the birds have died from avian flu. Members of the public are advised to avoid any contact with a dead bird or any bird that appears to be visibly sick and to report it to the Council's environmental health team. Unions have called for the bill setting up a national care service to be withdrawn in its current form. The STUC claims the legislation, which is designed to end the postcode lottery of adult social care, isn't fit for purpose. The Social Care Minister, Kevin Stewart, says there are a lot of myths about the new service, which will be designed with staff and service users. The Scottish Parliament's presiding officer has apologised after a member of the public was asked to leave Holyrood's Equalities Committee for wearing a scarf in the suffragette colours. Alison Johnson said they had never banned at the Parliament and that Holyrood actively supports universal suffrage. And that committee was considering amendments to planned reforms on gender recognition. Members voted to change their provisions for 16 and 17-year-olds. They will now have to live in their acquired gender for at least 6 months rather than 3 before applying for a gender recognition certificate. A listed building in Dundee, which was destroyed in a deliberate fire at the weekend, will be demolished as soon as can be arranged. The City Council has said that it's the only viable option for the former Robertson's furniture store, which was gutted by a huge blaze on Saturday. Crews battled the flames for 9 hours after the alarm was raised. The building on Barrack Street dates back to the 1930s but has lain empty since 2011. Now, there are early signs that unemployment here, which has been on a long downward trend, could be starting to increase. And what people are earning is still falling in real terms as inflation remains high. Well, our business correspondent, David Henderson, is here. David, just take us through these indicators. They're signs of ongoing economic pain, really, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yet again, we're seeing prices and the cost of living soar and wages just not keeping up. This graph shows the problem. There's wages, beg your pardon, there's prices rising at the top there, rising fast, wages below. They're on the rise, but nothing like as quick. And over time, you can see that as a result there, take-home pay lagging further and further behind. And since that trend has gone on for months, there's rising pressure on household budgets and a cost of living crisis. Now, there's another set of important statistics that have come out today. This is the unemployment figures. Now, unemployment has fallen really quite significantly since the last recession back in 2008. It's down now at just 3.5% of the workforce. That's close to a 50-year low. But today, just at the right-hand side of the graph there, you can see it just ticking up slightly. Scotland's still doing better than the UK as a whole. But the big question is, does it mark a turning point? Because the Bank of England has warned that we're entering recession, that the economy is set to shrink, and that unemployment is set to rise up to about 6.5% within a couple of years. And it's just too early to know if that trend is just starting this month.
And I take it these are the kinds of figures that are going to inform the Chancellor's autumn statement on Thursday.
Absolutely. It's a very grim backdrop to that budget statement, and it underlines the challenges facing the Chancellor. How does he get the UK economy growing again, growing faster, so that there are more of those sort of good, well-paid jobs that people are looking for? And at the same time, how does he tackle the cost of living crisis so that inflation comes down, so wages are rising higher than inflation, so people who are in work start to feel better off and not worse off? It's not going to be easy because poor wage growth has really been baked into the UK economy for quite a while now, for more than 10 or 15 years, and something dramatic is going to have to change to turn that around. At the same time, the UK is also grappling with all the same sort of problems that other countries in the West are facing: higher costs of borrowing, higher energy bills, higher food costs, higher inflation, and it's hard to see those things changing very quickly.
Yeah, no easy answers at all at the moment, are there? OK, thanks very much, David. You're watching Reporting Scotland, tonight's top story. Many GP surgeries say demand for their services is massively exceeding what they can provide. And still to come, on the scent of an invader tracking the stoats that pose a threat to Orkney's wildlife. 5 more warships are to be built on the Clyde. Confirmation of the decision to press ahead with the construction of the Type 26 frigates came overnight from the Prime Minister during the G20 summit in Bali. BAE Systems, which has sites in Govan and Scotstoun, has secured a £4.2 billion contract for the work, which could keep around 1,700 people at the yards in work. Here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr.
A miserable day in the Clyde, but joy for the workforce inside the BAE yard at Govan. 5 new Type 26 warships will be built here. That's on top of the 3 already under construction. BAE Systems say they'll build on that success.
So we're going to use this contract to invest in skills, in technology and infrastructure, which will make us increasingly competitive. The National Shipbuilding Strategy has a pipeline of orders that we're anxious to win in the future. So we approach the future with confidence, using this contract as a foundation for future success.
Shipbuilding is so heavily linked to Scotland's cultural identity. This fresh contract should ensure a new generation of workers busy now with the hard steel and high tech on this river. Shipbuilding is also a totemic issue politically. The local SNP MP welcomes the work. But does this mean the UK government kept its promises made in the 2014 independence campaign?
Not quite. I think that what we will have to wait and see is what happens with the next announcement, which will be the fleet support ships. Certainly, I take the view, as do many MPs across the political divide, that the fleet support ships should be built in the UK.
The UK government say they've poured billions of pounds into Scottish defence shipyards, and they're planning a 30-year pipeline of orders.
It's a huge investment by Rishi Sunak's government in our shipbuilding, and it will safeguard 3,500 jobs on the Clyde, as well as over 500 jobs across the UK. And not only that, it will boost our naval defences.
The Ministry of Defence has been criticised by a cross-party committee of MPs for wasting billions in procurement, so any cost overruns on this project will be watched carefully. The Prime Minister made the announcement about the deal at the G20 in Bali as he condemned Russian aggression. Building these anti-submarine hunters will protect jobs, but they have a future job to do, protecting us. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland.
Well, now let's get tonight's sport with Amy, and Scotland's men gearing up for just a friendly in Turkey tomorrow.
Yes, Laura. As we know, the World Cup, of course, starts in 5 days. And while Scotland might not be there, we still do have a little bit of international action to look forward to. Thank you very much. Good evening. The Scotland head coach, Steve Clarke, says tomorrow's friendly in Turkey is ideal preparation for his team's upcoming qualifying campaign for the European Championship. Clarke and his players are in Diyarbakir with a near full-strength squad, although Che Adams, Nathan Patterson and Kenny McLean have all pulled out. And there are no Celtic players either. They're in Sydney for a mid-season tournament. Liverpool teenager Calvin Ramsey could be handed his international debut.
Managed to get a good percentage of the players with us that were with us last month, even though it's not an official FIFA window. So that was important. We can speak about what we did. We've already touched on what we did last camp in September, and we look to improve that. And obviously we've picked a difficult friendly. It's a difficult place to come. Turkey and ourselves are evenly matched in terms of world rankings, so we look forward to a good game.
Well, Liverpool's Andy Robertson will once again captain the side. He's seen firsthand the development of his club teammate Calvin Ramsey, but he's also been impressed with the squad's other young players. Midfielder Lewis Ferguson is enjoying a good run of form at Italian side Bologna following his summer move from Aberdeen. Robertson says it's important to have fresh faces in the squad to ensure the national team moves forward.
Fergie's doing very well in Italy now. He's done well in Aberdeen for years, and he's made a move abroad, and yeah, it's paid off for him, and he's playing really well at the minute, and full of confidence, and that's what you need. And we've also got a few other young lads that are doing really well at the minute, and you always need people pushing you. You always like to see the young players coming through because they're the future of Scotland, and with the young lads we've got just now, then the future looks bright.
Well, the city of Diyarbakir isn't the easiest place to travel to for the loyal Tartan Army. It lies close to the Syrian border, but some Scottish fans have made the trip. Many of them have been enjoying a warm welcome from their hosts as they tick off another destination on the map.
The Turkish people have been so warm and friendly towards us. Everywhere we've went, they've seen the kilt, they've seen the Scotland top, and they've welcomed us with open arms.
When we were in Peru, we could not get away from the people. They were so warm, welcoming and friendly. Everybody wanted to photograph, and the same thing here. They've never seen Scottish people before. This is a novelty to them.
You go on these trips to support Scotland, but as a consequence of supporting, you go to some wonderful and fantastic places. You'd never go to these places. So the more obscure the place, as a supporter, the happier I am.
Nothing will stop the Tartan Army, will it? Well, finally, rugby. And Scotland's players looked pretty devastated at full time on Sunday, didn't they? As they spurned a great chance to beat New Zealand for the first time ever. But the squad insist that the disappointment won't hamper their preparations to play Argentina. The Scots managed to stay dry this afternoon as they trained on the indoor pitch at Oriam as they limbered up for their final autumn test match. Sione Tipolotu spoke to the media after the session and he reflected on the 31-23 defeat to the All Blacks.
I was really disappointed and, like you said, no more than Gregor, you know, just to hear him speak after the game and to hear how hurt he was after the game, after knowing how close we were, and to look around the change room and see the boys. And I think that's only going to be added motivation for this weekend. We're playing the same ground in front of our same fans. I suppose we just want to repay the fans for coming out every week over the last, block of 4 games and supporting us. So it's massive motivation for us, and we're using it as a bit of fuel this weekend to get the job done.
Yeah, it was a real roller coaster of emotions on Sunday, wasn't it, Laura?
Yeah, it still hurts a bit as a fan, doesn't it?
Here's hoping for a better result against Argentina.
Yeah, and that elusive victory over the All Blacks. The wait for that
goes on. The wait goes on. It does indeed.
Next time. Yeah. Thanks, Amy. Now, stoats have been a problem in Orkney for more than a decade, posing a threat to the native wildlife. So specialist dogs have been working there for the past 5 years to find them. And now they've gone back to the area where stoats were first discovered to track down the last few. Hannah Rowe has been to see how it's all working out.
This is no ordinary dog. Meet Thorn. He's on a mission to remove this invasive species from Orkney.
Stoats are native to the UK but not native to Orkney. So they arrived about 12 years ago that we know of, and they predate on native animals. So the Orkney vole, which are found nowhere else in the world, and native ground nesting birds like curlews, lapwings, redchan. So our main method of removing stoats from Orkney are a lethal spring trap, and the dogs take things to another level because they can help us pinpoint where stoats are at any one time.
The traps may sound cruel, but they are instant kill and essential for getting rid of the stoats. For those that avoid the traps, dogs like Thorn have proved vital for finding evidence that stoats are in the area. The dogs sniff out stoat poo, or scat as it's known. They then let their handler know when they found some.
Thorn's a very active dog, and he can search a lot of wide areas. Works for maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. We cover approximately 50 hectares a day we try and do. We had a very good springtime, and we were successful in trapping a lot of both juvenile and adult stoats. His reward's a ball, and he lives for the ball.
Since 2017, 3,500 stoats have been caught in Orkney, and several areas have been declared officially stoat-free. For Thorn, though, the work is far from over. It's going to be a busy winter ahead. Hannah Rowe, reporting Scotland.
Yeah, quite the operation. OK, now let's go over to Laura and Gary to find out what's happening on the BBC Scotland channel at 9 o'clock.
Ahead of the Chancellor's autumn statement, we'll ask if energy companies should be asked to pay more tax on their profits to help balance the books.
A BBC investigation finds more foreign workers have died in Qatar in recent months, just days before the World Cup kicks off.
And could Donald Trump be about to announce his return to US politics?
All that and more at 9 on the BBC Scotland channel.
Well, now Judith is here with the weather. Wow, that looks wild.
Choppy. It's Wick
Yeah, we're going to see some high winds up across northern Scotland. Good for surfing, Laura.
Oh, I'm not sure I fancy that, frankly.
Get your surfboard out. Thank you very much. Very good evening to you. Yes, indeed, some choppy seas there behind me. And we did see some heavy rain as well. However, Mother Nature, she played a blinder with this picture earlier on today across the borders. Now let me guide you through the pressure chart for the next couple of days. First of all, we have tonight's front. That will continue to clear away to the Northern Isles where it will become confined. But the strength of the winds with the squeeze on the isobars, we're looking at really windy conditions across the Northern Isles, particularly Shetland, right through until the end of the week. This low pressure system coming our way later tomorrow and all day Thursday. Now, we'd still have the tail end of a yellow heavy rain warning in force, and it's valid until 9 o'clock from, say, the River Dee right down to the River Tay. But it is the tail end, as I say, because that rain's already moving away. It will become confined to the Northern Isles. It will ease as we head through the overnight period. The wind's easing right across the country. Clearing skies as well. Could lead to a touch of frost in some shelter spots. It will be quite a cold night. Just a scattering of showers coming in from the Irish Sea across the southwest and through parts of Argyll. And we still have that rain across the Northern Isles with milder temperatures and those high winds as well. High winds here first thing tomorrow. Generally a quiet start to the day, a lot of dry weather, some brighter sunny spells first thing, a chilly start as well. Now, as we come into the afternoon, we'll hang on to those high winds across the Northern Isles. Now, we are looking at severe gales across Shetland, coupled with outbreaks of rain, gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour. +32 for Orkney, not quite as strong the wind strength of wind, but we will see some showers. Generally a lot of dry weather for eastern Scotland. You'd be unlucky if you caught a shower. A cool feel though, lighter winds, and we'll still have a scattering of shower coming into the southwest, into Argyll, up and towards the Lewis and also across Tidey as well. But I think Lewis, Harris, Skye, the northwest seen the best weather, the driest conditions and some sunshine. Then as we head into tomorrow evening, showers gathering in the east. It's a sign of things to come as that low pressure system hurtles up from the south, bringing some heavy rain. We still have the high winds over Shetland. Everywhere seeing some rain on Thursday, a windy day, and it will feel cool. That's your forecast.
Yeah, I'll let you go to get on the road, to get on up to Wick for your surfing trip.
With it, on it.
Now tonight's main news again. Doctors are warning that increasing numbers of GP practices are at risk of collapse because of staff shortages. It comes as a survey of surgeries by the British Medical Association here suggested over 80% of them believe demand was exceeding capacity. And 5 more warships are to be built on the Clyde. BAE Systems, which has yards in Govan and Scotstoun, has secured a £4.2 billion contract to build the Type 26 frigates. And that is Reporting Scotland for now. I will be back with your late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. Join me then if you can. Until then, from everyone in the team right across the country, do have a very good evening. Good night.